It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, what is going on?
I'm feeling slightly better today, so hopefully we're on the road to recovery. And got my coffee here.
There we go.
Voice in good shape, and I'm ready to do this. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is, the part of this job that I love is that we get to talk about everything that happened today right after it happened. That's why we have an afternoon podcast. And Smitty, not very much happened today. It's kind of a
Tuesdays typically, like, it's Tomlin Tuesday, so we know that is going to likely dictate the way that this show goes on Tuesday. But then there's always going to be cases like today where not a whole lot gets said. He always does start off talking about some injury stuff, so I guess we can start there. And we also have an injury to a significant player on an opponent in the upcoming schedule to talk about as well. But let's start with Steelers stuff. Kenny Pickett comes out of this game with some bumps and bruises, a little bit of an ankle thing going on there that Tomlin said could limit him early in the week. Calvin Austin.
I suspect that has been maybe a couple weeks in the works
really?
now. He's been kind of gimpy for a couple weeks now. I'm not sure that there was anything maybe new as much as just an accumulation of being banged up, but I certainly seems like they're going to give him Wednesday off, or at least let him be limited in practice on Wednesday.
Interesting. Okay. Obviously, we all knew about, the knee thing early in the season and then the rib thing, but yeah, I didn't know about anything going on with the ankle.
I think it would have been like maybe might have been the Titans game, or was it the Packers game where he came up a little gimpy and was like limping around at the end of the game. And I feel like ever since then, he's maybe been a little less than 100%. They don't have to report any injury. It's talking about this with Joe Burrow too. They don't have to report an injury that doesn't make him lose practice reps. I think he's fine. I wouldn't worry about it, but it sounds like they're angling towards giving him a day off here.
Gotcha. Okay. Calvin Austin also dealing with a little bit of an ankle thing, which he said. So were they worried about that at first? Because Tomlin made it seem like 48 hours later it looks better.
The video of the injury looked like it was a high ankle sprain. Then you'd be talking 3 to 4 weeks. So Tomlin saying there's a chance he could practice this week. I think is unexpected in a good way. Positive news for Calvin Austin. Meant to ask Mike if they have a backup punt returner, and I forgot to because I really have no idea who it would be. Nick and I were driving back from Cincinnati. Like, who is so Miles Boykin has like
I got it
7 career punt returns. I think he's the guy with the most on the team. That's not exactly a lot.
Alan, this is perfect for this opponent too. The last time the Steelers played the Arizona Cardinals, Diontae Johnson punt return touchdown against them.
Oh, there you go. He does have career punt returns. So does Patrick Peterson when he was with the Arizona Cardinals. Was a punt returner as well. I think I would be hesitant to send DJ or Pat P out there to return punts. Miles Boykin seems much more feasible in my mind. James Pierre also, I think, did it in college. Whatever.
Florida Atlantic.
Yes.
James Pierre.
At one point last year, and they had a Temple Owl, a FAU Owl, and a Rice Owl on the roster at the same time. Chris Boswell went to Rice. Can't remember who the Temple grad would have been, but those are the only 3 Division I schools nicknamed Owls, and a group of owls is called a parliament.
There we go.
The more you know banner go across here real quick.
Yeah. On the positive side of things here, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Monty Adams, Tomlin says that the light is on for both of those guys. Haven't seen Minkah practice at all since that injury. Monty got in some limited time last week, so that one would be expected. For what it's worth, the Monte KZ did say that he expected Minkah back this week, but we saw Keanu Neal say that he was fine and then go on IR. And that was talking about himself. So who knows what's going to happen there. But we'll see if those guys are able to work their way back this week.
Yeah, I believe about half of what players say about their own injuries. It's not that they're lying, it's that they're generally overconfident. Remember last year I talked to Ahkello Witherspoon after the Cleveland game when he popped his hamstring. He was like, yeah, I'll be fine. And he missed like the whole rest of the year. Like that was, they don't know. Like they don't know.
Right.
They're so I don't take a lot of stock in what players say about their injuries, but Mike Tomlin said that they are going to practice this week. If Minkah practices, I expect that he will play. And I mean, 2 drives with Minkah, TJ, and Cam Hayward. We talked yesterday about how TJ said if the offense can continue to dominate time of possession the way they did in that Cincinnati game, that this defense can be even better. Smitty, I don't know if you've looked this up. Where would you say the Steelers are in team defense right now in terms of scoring?
6th.
They're 5th. They're the like I don't feel like the Steelers fans are talking about this like it's the 5th best 4th in takeaways, 5th in points against. Are we talking about this? Like, are we not talking about this defense enough? Like how good it is, despite the fact that they've been playing without one of their 3 best players for all but two drives this entire year. Like,
yeah,
like how good could they be if all 3 of those guys play and the offense can control the clock?
Yep. Yeah, people get too hung up on the yards, I think. We've talked a lot about that, how that's kind of just been not only the Steelers' way of playing, but which you're seeing a lot of trend around the league as well. A lot of bend, don't break, teams knowing that they're going to take the ball away at some point, make them run as many plays they have. Like this is just honestly a trend that we're seeing go around the league, but certainly that the Steelers have kind of employed for a while now.
And considering the offenses they're about to face,
yeah,
I mean, only Indianapolis and until you get to Baltimore, and Seattle's a decent team, but not really a dominant offense. Like,
their offensive line has been brutal too.
This is like a top. This is going to be like they're already top 5 in yards or in points. They're already top 5 in takeaways. But I mean, it's not really unrealistic to think if they can stay healthy, if the offense continues to set them up well, that they're gonna end up there in yards too. Like
yeah. Well, the rushing yards against has dropped from 170 to like 118 within a matter of 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Drastically improved on the ground.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think you're going to end up, they're now 9th. They're now, I'm sorry, 24. They have the 9th most yards, but they're 5th in points and 4th in takeaways. I would be surprised if they don't get to the midpoint in yards by the end of the year. I think they can get there.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty reasonable.
I agree. We were talking about Minkah. I put out a question, or asked for questions on Twitter, and we got 3 of them about one player, and I just feel like I can kind of tie it in right now, so I might as well bring it up. Because everybody wants to know about Trenton Thompson. I feel like he's, the guy that's kind of become an unsung hero for this team and is like the new guy that everybody's kind of fallen in love with over the last couple of weeks in terms of Steelers fans. And I think we touched on him a little bit yesterday and talked about could he have a role even when Minkah comes back? But that's what people want to know is how do you keep this guy on the field even when Minkah does get back into the fold?
Well, I mean, I think you saw the role Keanu Neal had, right? I mean, I think that's kind of the one he gets. And look, I don't know what Keanu Neal. I said when Keanu Neal said he was healthy, like, and then he wasn't playing. Like, if it's a rib injury, either it's broken or it's not broken. If it's broken, it's like 6 weeks. So, like, I think there's going to be, and we don't know. So I have to speculate. The Steelers haven't said anything, but I think it's. I mean, that Keanu Neal role should be Trenton Thompson's until Neal's back anyway, and then. I mean, you worry about that problem when you get there. I think this is a sort of a fan exercise that the team never even really contemplates. Like, what do we – I make fun of Penguins fans every year. Like, what are the Penguins lines going to be like when the Penguins are healthy? I don't know. The Penguins haven't been healthy since 1996. I like it. It's just like it's not ever going to happen. Don't worry about worrying about it. Like, so I think the Steelers probably don't care what happens when they get everybody healthy. They'll figure it out then. But I think there's a role for Trenton Thompson on this team. For sure, he's played good enough to stay on the 53-man roster and at very least play some special teams. But I think he's done everything that could have possibly asked him to do.
I looked at this matchup coming up, and I looked at a player on the other side, and Trey McBride on Arizona, who's been really good this year coming along. And I look at this and, like, even if you do get Minkah back, I think Trenton Thompson should be tasked with kind of taking him away the way that he's played against tight ends recently, how they used him against Njoku. So I think this is a kind of a matchup where you'd be utilizing him anyway, because when you look at this Arizona offense, outside of him and Hollywood Brown, who are you worried about on this Arizona offense? So I would be using Trenton Thompson to take away him.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is like, if I'm looking at this matchup, Joey Porter against Hollywood seems to make sense. Pat Pete against a guy like Rondale Moore seems to make sense. Very similar to the lineup from Cleveland, right? Where you kind of have that one guy, you got a bit worried about getting beat deep, another guy who's shifty and works on the inside underneath. Tight end Trey McBride, I agree, is a perfect matchup for Trenton Thompson. And, those were a lot like, so if Minkah's back, he's going to play free safety. You're going to talk about, Neal playing the other I'm sorry, not Neal, KZ playing the other safety, but KZ's a lot smaller than most tight ends. So if you're talking about man coverage against the tight end, I would play Thompson in that Neal role. That's exactly what Neal was doing before they started losing safeties to injury. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And keep talking about injuries. That's been a theme in the Steelers' luck in terms of, obviously, the Steelers have dealt with their own injuries, but it seems like every opponent that the Steelers have on their schedule suffers a pretty significant injury, like right around when they're getting ready to play the Steelers. Now the Indianapolis Colts, who the Steelers see in a couple weeks, Jonathan Taylor dealing with a thumb injury. Is it that he's already had surgery on this, or he's going to have surgery on this?
Has had surgery.
So he's had surgery on this.
Will undergo surgery tomorrow. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I mean, how many times you see somebody undergo surgery and then not miss at least a couple weeks? So like
3-4 weeks usually for surgery. I mean, I can't envision. Thumb is not the world's most impactful. Certainly players can play with broken thumbs even, but running back, you kind of need it to hold on to the football. Like, it's not like a defensive lineman where you just like wrap that in 9 layers of tape and get back out there. Even if he would play, it'd be question, whether it'd be 100%. Colts are technically in the playoff race. Like, they're in playoff position right now, actually. But, got to think they're going to be more concerned about his future than winning one more game this year in a season that doesn't really seem like it's going anywhere. So I would imagine they're going to be cautious with him instead of trying to rush him back. Sure looks like he's going to miss this game. So you're talking about Browns with no Watson, Bengals with no Burrow twice, the Colts with no Jonathan Taylor. It's about as friendly of a 4 or 5 week stretch as you can possibly imagine in the NFL.
And as you pointed out, like when we played Lamar the first time Lamar played, what are the chances he's going to play both times against the Steelers? We don't see that. So,
Lamar Jackson has had injury trouble the last 5 or 6 years. Like, seems, and the Ravens are always in. There's always an injured Raven. Always. It's just like a matter of course. Ronnie Stanley got hurt last week too. So yeah.
You think Ravens fans are ever like, what are we gonna do when we get healthy?
Maybe. I don't know. That's interesting. I wonder what that, like, compare the. Is there such a thing as a person that is a Ravens and Penguins fan? I doubt it, but like, I need to talk to that person if there is one, because. Yeah. I bet it's very simple.
I know the opposite of that, like a Steelers and Caps fan, but yeah, I don't know about a Penguins and Ravens fan. I'm sure they exist. But okay, let's move on. Interestingly enough, I also put out when I put on this on Twitter, I got some questions about Diontae Johnson, and Tomlin did talk about.
I didn't hear anything about Diontae Johnson.
Diontae Johnson's all over the place. Yeah, Deontay's all over the place. We got a question about Diontae Johnson and actually the coaching staff, Frisman Jackson. We got a YouTube comment about Diontae Johnson. Tomlin talked today about the challenge on a Diontae Johnson play. So let's start there and see how we can expand this conversation off of that, because I thought it was interesting talking about that. He did say that there is somebody that is watching for those from the booth. It used to be Teryl Austin, wouldn't specify who that was that is tasked with that now, but there is somebody there. Talked about the fact that he thought if there was any conviction that it was a touchdown, they would roll it that way on the field, because then you can always go to review and turn it and change the call that way. With it not being called that on the field, didn't feel strongly enough about challenging it, and kind of talked about the process there, Alan. So what did you think about his answer? And yeah, I mean, we'll just go from there.
Well, okay. I mean, he said a lot and he didn't say a lot also, right? Like he said, okay, there's
Yeah.
a person in the booth, but I'm not going to tell you who it is. Well, there's only like 5 coaches in the booth, so it's not really that hard to figure out who it might be. I mean, I'm not going to speculate, but like there's not only so many options. All the position coaches are on the field, right? And they don't have, very many of those like senior analyst type. Glenn Thomas is the one coach that I know is in the box, or at least has been. I'm not sure if he still is with the changes at offensive coordinator. David Corley, who's the assistant quarterbacks coach, I know he's up there. Like there's just not that many guys in the booth, right? But here's what Tomlin didn't say: who it is, and also like he didn't say what he was told. What were they telling him, right? And so either one of two things happened here, right? Either Tomlin got bad advice from his person in the booth, and he's protecting them, which is a very Tomlin thing to do, right? He would do that. Or Tomlin doesn't trust his person in the booth, which really more lines up with what the evidence is here. If he's talking about, well, I didn't see it live, I didn't get a replay. Well, if you have absolute faith in your person in the booth and they say it's 100% overturn, which by the way, I don't even really think is the case, but like if you have absolute faith in your person in the booth and say, oh no, absolutely, this will be overturned, challenge it, doesn't matter whether you saw it live or you got a replay on the scoreboard, you would just do it. Like Mike Sullivan for the Penguins, Mike Sullivan has a lot of faith in his video staff. They are
good.
The best in the NHL at picking up those offside calls and when to challenge and when not to challenge, and they're great at it. It does not feel like Mike Tomlin has the same faith in the people that are involved in that process to where he would just say, like, hey, they said no, I said no. Like, that doesn't seem like what's going on here. Seems like Mike Tomlin is trying to figure out for himself whether this should be overturned or not. And if he's not getting that information with his own eyeballs, then he doesn't have the same level of faith in the people in the booth. And look, should he? I don't know. Like when he had Teryl Austin there, when he had Brian Flores there was a person with real life, significant NFL experience to make that decision. And I'm not sure that anybody that's in that booth right now has that level of experience. And so I'm not sure that he should have that level of faith, but it's clearly a problem, right? Like that can't be okay. Like it can't be that, oh, we're on the road and so we're just going to go with whatever the refs say. Like that can't be the answer. And there needs to be, look, we've talked on this podcast a lot about how I feel like the Steelers erred in not replacing Brian Flores. And not only that, not taking the same concept that brought Teryl Austin and Brian Flores to this team and applying it to the offense. There should be an offensive Brian Flores and a defensive Brian Flores, and there should be no problem about one of those guys being in the booth. And I think the Steelers have failed to invest in their coaching staff for years now. And I think this is another symptom of that problem.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's almost like, we talked a lot about the failure of the Canada stuff was done before the season started. I feel like the same way is with this in terms of, who you're not employing in terms of either the people or not having enough people on the staff to do these jobs. So yeah, I can't necessarily say, because I don't know who it is, I can't blame Tomlin for not trusting them, but why are you putting somebody in that position if you don't trust them to take their word for it? I don't know. It's just one of those things. Again, I feel like the failure is done before the season, not necessarily in this moment on Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, it's a failure process. I agree with that. And I think it's the same thing that we've seen come up in several areas now. Like, and I don't understand it. Is it just money? Is it, an unwillingness from Tomlin to expand his staff? I don't know. I've never really gotten a straight answer there, but it certainly feels like it's been a continual problem and something the Steelers really ought to address.
Yeah. And, this was a challenge on a Diontae Johnson play. I said we could kind of carry that over because we got comments about him. Tyman55 commented on yesterday's episode and said, trade Diontae Johnson in the offseason. Off-field stuff aside, he's making too much money to be running backwards and dropping more passes.
Well, there's a lot wrong with that from Tyman here.
I think this is Ty Domi.
I don't spell. Well, never mind. I'm not gonna. Whatever Ty Domi says,
they were right. Yeah, they were right.
Correct. I don't have any. I am not gonna ever say that Ty Domi is wrong. Ever. So yeah, we'll go with that. Assuming this time in as someone other than Ty Domi, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions there. Like I hear this a lot that Diontae, like people talk about Diontae Johnson like he is a highly paid player, and I don't quite understand why, because he's not. Not compared to other NFL wide receivers. Like that's just not correct. Diontae Johnson is, I don't know, somewhere around the 15th or 20th highest paid receiver, depending on how you do the math. Like it's not like he's getting paid like he should be a Pro Bowler or an All Pro or something like that. Is that something you feel like is sort of a I hear that a lot.
Oh yeah. And on it, do you think that it has? I was going to bring this up because I do see it all the time as well. Do you feel like it's because he's the only skill position player on the Steelers really making any money? That the reason that is a talking point.
Maybe I think it's also just like he makes a lot of money compared to what the Steelers have paid wide receivers in the past, but like the NFL wide receiver market is in a different place. Like that is, you cannot compare what he makes to what Antonio Brown made. Like it is a whole nother world. Like there's like mid-tier slot receivers making what Antonio Brown made. Like we've come a long way in terms of what that position looks like. And so, yeah, I mean, Deontay's contract is
15th highest paid, right under Brandon Cooks and ahead of Christian Kirk.
Right. Like, so like, do we think Brandon Cooks and Christian Kirk are great wide receivers like that? I mean, it's just, that's what the salary demands of the position are right now. And I think he's
can I bring something up here too that I just thought about? I've actually made this point in the past, so I can't say just thought about, but have rethought about. I haven't brought it up on here, and I want to get your perspective on this as well. The Steelers, who I think everybody would say, if you're trusting them at one position, it's finding talent at the wide receiver position, right?
Yeah.
They drafted Diontae Johnson, developed Diontae Johnson, and then paid Diontae Johnson, maybe something that they don't do with every receiver that they do find, regardless of the talent level. Does that not tell you that there is a misconception or there is a drastic difference in the way that the fan base feels about him as opposed to the team? They like this guy enough to give him a new contract, a second contract, which I don't know that a lot of people in the fan base agreed with, but they did. So does that not show you where the team feels about him as opposed to where the fan base feels about him?
Yeah, I mean, he's entering the last year of his deal next year. His cap hit next year will be $15.8 million.
Yeah.
They're probably going to try to extend him. Like I don't like, and I don't really think that's like wrong. Like there's not really any reason not to. Maybe you kick down that first year cap hit a little bit, and I just like the idea that they would trade him. I mean, maybe because you are the team that feels good about your ability to restock that position, but like this wide receiver is not a position of strength on the Steelers right now. Like we saw what it looked like when Diontae Johnson was hurt, and it was ugly. Like
if Diontae Johnson's not part of their plans, beyond this season, you're talking about drafting a receiver in the second round, probably. First or second round. Yeah.
You're talking about first round wide receiver if you trade Diontae Johnson. And if you're talking about free agent, like that's what I'm saying. Like you're gonna pay what you would pay Diontae Johnson for an unquestionably worse receiver on the open market. Like whatever you think Diontae Johnson is worth, $15.8 million is not getting you Diontae Johnson again next offseason if you go try to find a free agent. Like it's just not like that. That's
also just below Diontae Johnson, Hunter Renfrow.
Right. Like who, barely playing. Like, I mean, the guys and the guys in that whole sort of tier, like there are just, there are not a lot of guys that are difference makers that are making that amount of money. Like they just aren't. And so, it's you could spend more. Like if you want, I don't know. And I haven't really broken into the free agent class. Like you could say like, okay, we need to spend $30 million to have a AJ Brown, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs type. Okay, maybe. But like, other than that, like I don't see how the team trades Diontae Johnson and gets better, unless that trade is like for a first-round draft pick that they're just going to use on a wide receiver, which is, I guess, plausible, but like I don't see that being particularly likely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the wide receiver free agent class right now. I mean, Mike Evans is a free agent. He's 30, he'd be 31. Odell again, Curtis Samuel. Like, yeah, it's not inspiring.
Yeah, I mean,
Not inspiring
is
at all.
Mike Evans better than Diontae Johnson? I don't know. They're about the same. Like their contracts were pretty similar. I think they're pretty comparable players, right? Like good but flawed. Like I think that's what you get. Like I don't know. I like Mike Evans. I'd take Mike Evans, but I don't think like trading Diontae to sign Mike Evans makes the Steelers like a whole lot better.
Very different receiver. Like he's going to score probably a lot more touchdowns.
Probably not as good of a compliment for George Pickens. Like Mike Evans and George Pickens, a lot more overlap than Diontae and George Pickens, right? Like I think that, and not as versatile either. Like, you know, if the Steelers ever drafted another big outside receiver, they could move Diontae Johnson in the slot in a heartbeat and be very okay with that. You know, I just think, you know, he's a really good player. They're probably going to try to extend him. Like the idea that they're going to try to trade him, I don't think that's even close to reality.
Let's continue on with this. Another extension, and this is bringing in his position coach now, Frisman Jackson. Should Frisman Jackson be fired as wide receiver coach with the way Diontae and GP have not only played but acted as of late?
Frizz has had a tough job there, man. And I think, you know, look, Frisman Jackson was hired because of his relationship with Matt Canada. And I can't say that like he, like, unlike Eddie Faulkner, who's been here a while, and he did have a relationship with Matt Canada, but he was actually hired by the Steelers before Matt Canada was. Eddie Faulkner was very clearly a Matt Canada guy, but Eddie Faulkner has also very clearly done a very good job developing NFL running backs. Did a great job with James Conner, who, by the way, I'm going to put this prediction down, is going to be a pain in the butt for the Steelers on Sunday. I am expecting him to have a huge game. It is just very James Conner-like for that to be a thing that happens. He was great with James Conner. He's great with Jaylen Warren. Certainly more than good enough with Najee Harris. Like, there's a track record with Eddie Faulkner of success as a running backs coach that I'm not sure that I feel that Frisman Jackson has had with the Steelers that should make him stick around when the guy that picked him is gone. Like, usually if you're a coordinator and you bring in guys to be your coaches and you get fired, those guys move on. I expect that there's going to be a lot of turnover on the Steelers offensive staff, and it wouldn't surprise me if Frisman Jackson is one of those guys. I don't think he's done a bad job. That's just sort of the way it is. Like, you're going to bring in a new coordinator. He's going to want to hire some of his assistants, and that seems like a place where the Steelers could look to make a change. That would not surprise me at all.
Yeah. You know, Eddie Faulkner, I think, has done a great job, but I would say that, like, the one really able to hang his hat on right now is the development of Jaylen Warren as an undrafted guy, what he's been able to do. And, like, if we saw maybe like a Calvin Austin really like burst onto the scene and produce, maybe that would be a guy that you could say, look at what Frisman was able to develop here. But, you know, Diontae was already Diontae, and George, you know, who they took in the second round as a first round talent. I don't know that he's done enough for Frisman to be able to hang his hat on in that type of way.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think the Steelers' track record of success with the wide receiver position that far predates Frisman Jackson certainly plays into that too. You know, it's like how much credit do you to assign, you know, to the coach versus scouting, right? Like, I mean, that's part of it too. So, yeah, I mean, look, I like Frizz. I'm just being real. I think that looks like a position where they're probably going to make a move this offseason. It just makes sense.
I would have agreed with that. I'm actually glad somebody brought that up, though, because I don't think that we've touched on that. And, you know, you talking about all the potential turnover that could take place on the offensive staff is certainly to be something to monitor when we get to the offseason. But anything else, Alan?
No, I think we've got there. Let us know what you like. So Hines Ward and James Harrison were Hall of Fame semifinalists today. That was the other piece of news that we didn't really talk about. I know we got a game this week and we got a short week next week. So there's like stuff coming up, but let us know in the comments if you want us to talk about whether or not Hines Ward and James Harrison should be Hall of Famers. I think it's an interesting discussion, but it probably is a discussion that requires like a full episode sidebar from talking about this week's Pittsburgh Steelers. And maybe if they continue to be as uninteresting as they were today, they'll make it easy on us. But let us know what if you are hungry for that kind of content, let us know. And maybe if the response is loud, we will definitely go with that coming up here, and we'll see how it goes.
I'm going to bookmark my own tweet because I actually ended up getting, like, of course, like on this day, not a day where we're answering every question, I get 15. So we will get to these. I'll keep them in the bank and we'll be able to get to them throughout the week. But Alan, tell the people where they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on X, at PGH Steelers Now, sites account, SteelersNow.com. Read the words so I can get paid. Steelers Now Plus. Derek Bell has a great breakdown about why the Steelers' usage of Pat Freiermuth on Sunday was different and why it solved a lot of problems for this offense. Got to be a Steelers Now Plus subscriber to get it. Use the promo code Allen10, get 10-ish% off. I'm telling you, that will not last forever, so don't wait. Use it, get it. It's worth it. And then you also get all the best stuff from Pittsburgh Hockey Now. We talked a lot about hockey in this podcast for some reason today, but from Dan Kingarski, David Molinari, Shelley Anderson, and when the baseball hot stove or the Pirates version of it was sort of like one of those Coleman camp stoves, I guess, like a little sort of warm stove, but John Parato's got everything from there as well.
There we go. And Derek Bell, speaking of, I just saw this. I saw it when he did it, but I also have the YouTube page pulled up right now. 40-minute video on Kenny Pickett's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. If you're interested, go watch that as well. I am Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders and myself. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.